My name's Todd Taylor. I've been writing a book for about 15 years, 1,200 pages. This is about 7 pages of that. I actually wrote 2 books in the interim. Not a lot to, you don't have to really know too much about this right now, but Chuds is the brother, Casmo is the girlfriend, and Murtaw is the lead character, and he really thinks that there's insects inside of him. We called it war. When I was 9, 10, and Chuds was 12, 13, we constantly played around in the high desert. We built bunkers out of rocks and sit there for hours. Imagine we were in North Africa, hiding from passing 4x4s, pretend they were panzers. The weirdest thing we'd come across were huge piles of bones. Yeah? Kaz was half listening. She looked up from a magazine and put her finger down, not to lose her place. I think they were supposed to burn them, Murtaw said. Whose bones? Castle asked. Ranchers, I guess. The butchers? The thought of who owned them never crossed my mind. Just that they were fun. Fun? Yeah, really fun. Several miles out of town, the mounds sprouted up in different places. Murtaw rose off the couch. Want one? He said, and looking into the fridge. Sure. Thanks. Murtaw cracked open a beer, handed it to Casmo, and opened the second for himself. I remember only a couple of them burning. They were sort of pretty much like big teepee-shaped bonfires. Really tall. Definitely taller than Chuds. We found the piles by the flies. From a distance, the flies looked like smoke. I don't get it. Why were there mounds of bones around needles? Needles, right? Castle asked. Yeah, outside needles. On-site butchers. A semi, a couple of trailers, one of them refrigerated. The local rancher gated up their livestock somewhere on their own property. The butcher would come in, set up shop, portable slaughterhouse. The heaps of bones were the discards, stuff that couldn't be rendered, I guess. Lots of spinal cords, chipped bones. I'm guessing to save on transportation expenses. The rancher wouldn't have to leave the property. I hate flies, Casmo said casually. You got used to them and they drove you crazy. Casmo nodded. The first couple of days on a fresh pile, the clouds of flies would be so black. Sometimes there were so many flies that the birds and coyotes stayed completely away. It's disgusting, Casmo said, taking a large chunk of beer, washing her mouth out and swallowing. Chuds and I fought each other with those bones, pretending we were primitive men. Casmo squinted and smiled at the same time. Why doesn't that surprise me? Occasionally found full spines, cartilage and cord still fresh, Murtaw said. They were lousy weapons. The vertebrae would fling off when you pulled back to strike with any force. But we discovered that if we hit one at the right angle against a Joshua tree, it would stick and wrap around the trunk, like a stripe on a barber pole. Just stay there. That's true. There were little surprises, too. Flies bore into a cow's eye and lay eggs. When you're rummaging through the pile, the eye will get squished and spray fly larvae out like juice. It was really important to keep your mouth shut. Fly larvae taste like living, wiggling dirt. Casmo dry gulped and looked disgusted. We looked for weapons in those piles. Femurs worked well. After we were both happy with our swords, we'd fight. Sometimes we'd play for 5 minutes, warming up, ligaments coming off of bones, becoming little whips at the ends, and then the hard blows came. The rule of thumb is that neither one of us was dizzy from blood loss. It was fair game. Jesus, Casper said. I knew you fought with your brother. We antagonized each other for 17 years straight, until the day he went off to college. I was his burden from the day I was born. The coolest fights around the piles were when the bones shattered. That was a blast. It feels so powerful that we broke fresh bones. We carried backups in our belt loops like ride batons. We felt like badasses. Didn't you worry about disease, infection, viruses? Casmo asked. It never entered our minds. We climbed through those piles, bits of muscle under our fingernails. It never occurred to us that it was a bad idea. I remember that day being extremely hot. Chud's first sorted fracture, and he was using his backup, a shorter one. I remember him brandishing the bone right in front of my eye, taunting me. There was a lot of meat on it, and it blurred pink. The gray-white bone, marbled connection flesh, it turned harmless-looking pink when he was going after me. I thought that war would be in deep reds, blood-splashed colors, serious colors, not light pink. And when we fought like that, full on, we called it war. I remember the sound. Clap, 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 clap. Then for no reason I could see, Chud slackened. He dropped his arms and he didn't call a timeout. I paused, thought twice about not hitting him. Then, ding, 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 went the dinner bell in my head, and I wound up as hard as I could, planted my feet, aimed for his torso, and Chud's in slow motion, in a half-assed attempted defense, dropped to one knee and raised his cow sword to the side of his head, about eye level. I hit him full force in the temple. Casno winced. I shattered the ball joint of the cow leg on his temple about a quarter inch from his right eye. When I pulled the femur back, Chud's head gave a little. You know the feeling when you wiggle a slightly loose tooth with your tongue? Casno nodded and squinted. Like that. Then a crazy-looking fountain of eggs, flies, maggots, and larvae poured out of Chud's broken weapon. It was a fucking horror show. They were so thick and oily, it looked like black blood squirting right from the skull. It was like a sprinkler for a little bit. The flies just didn't fly away. They circled his body. It was creepy. He fell slowly backwards and lay down in the mud. I had him. I finally had the asshole in a completely compromised situation. I could punish him. Fuck him up. Murtaw's voice became distant, icy. Then everything blackened around me. I didn't lose consciousness. These heavy sheets of flies dropped down all over me as I wound up, aiming for Chud's skull of mud. They coated everything, weighed me down like living oil. Murtaw's voice flattened to a tone that Casno had never heard from him. It was powerful, dark. I tried to kill Chud. I was so mad at him that I didn't feel like it was me who was thinking. I wanted him to pay. So I aimed to hit him over and over again. But those flies tried to stop me. His head became soft as the mud. It looked like a smear. He was liberated. Murtaw stared at his beard and paused. Then things started to brighten up again, like after an eclipse. I remember Chud's barely moving. I remember the brown lips of mud spreading all around him, like a personal crater. I remember all the divots in the mud around his head that had only struck his skull one time. 15, 20 close misses. Chud's chest rose up and down, and he was alive. I tried not to panic and sat next to him in the mud, not wanting to move him if he had a neck injury. We'd spent all this time constantly fighting, and it slowly dawned on me, only after I thought that I'd crippled him, that he was my best friend. I'd got what I'd wanted. I showed my brother that I could be as strong as him.